welcome seekers of truth and wisdom. Today, we embark on a journey that will challenge our perceptions, ignite our curiosity, and delve deep into the hidden meanings of an ancient symbol. What if I told you that a figure long associated with darkness could be reimagined as a beacon of resilience? That the very embodiment of evil in some traditions might hold profound lessons about survival and strength? These are the questions we'll explore as we unravel the complex tapestry of Satan as a symbol of black survival. Our exploration begins in the crucible of history, where the seeds of this provocative idea were first sown. The story of Satan's transformation from a religious adversary to a cultural icon of resilience is as fascinating as it is controversial. It's a tale that spans centuries, continents, and the deepest recesses of the human spirit. Imagine, if you will, the sweltering fields of the antebellum South. Here, amidst unimaginable suffering, enslaved Africans whispered stories of a powerful being who defied an unjust authority. Was this the first glimmer of Satan as a symbol of resistance? Or perhaps we must look even further back, to the shores of Africa, where ancient deities were demonized by colonial powers, creating an unintended association between the demonic and the strength to endure. As we peel back the layers of this cultural phenomenon, we'll encounter artists who dare to reimagine religious iconography, activists who find power in subversion, and communities grappling with the weight of history and the promise of reinvention. We'll hear voices of protest and voices of praise, all intertwined in a complex harmony that echoes through time. But before we dive deeper, let me pose a question to you, dear listener. What does it mean to survive? To persist in the face of overwhelming odds, to find strength in the very symbols used to oppress you. These are the questions at the heart of our exploration today. So open your minds, prepare your hearts, and join me on this journey into the depths of cultural reinterpretation, spiritual resilience, and the enduring power of symbols. For in understanding the transformation of Satan into a symbol of black survival, we may just uncover profound truths about the human spirit itself. Let us begin with the historical context that gave birth to this fascinating cultural shift. In the annals of Western Christian thought, Satan has long stood as the ultimate adversary, the embodiment of rebellion against divine authority. This figure, often depicted with horns and a pitchfork, has been used to represent all that is evil and corrupt in the world. But how did this religious boogeyman become intertwined with the story of black resilience? To understand this transformation, we must first look to the dark days of colonialism and slavery. As European powers spread across the globe, they encountered rich and diverse spiritual traditions in Africa. These ancient practices, deeply rooted in the connection between the physical and spiritual worlds, were often misunderstood and feared by the colonizers. In their ignorance and desire for control, they labeled these unfamiliar rituals as devil worship. Consider, for a moment, the vibrant traditions of Vodou in Haiti. These practices, born from a fusion of West African spirituality and Catholicism, became a source of strength and identity for enslaved people. Yet, in the eyes of the slave owners, the drums that called to the low were nothing more than invocations of Satan himself. this misinterpretation laid the groundwork for a complex relationship between Black spirituality and the concept of the demonic. But it wasn't just spiritual practices that were demonized. The very act of resistance against slavery was often framed as a satanic rebellion. Slave owners, twisting scripture to suit their cruel purposes, portrayed themselves as divinely appointed masters and any who opposed them as agents of the devil. In this perverse logic, the enslaved person who yearned for freedom was cast as a disciple of Satan. Yet, in a profound twist of irony, this association began to take on new meaning in the hearts and minds of the oppressed. If Satan was the enemy of their oppressor's God, could he not also be an ally in their struggle for freedom? This seed of an idea, planted in the fertile soil of suffering and resistance, would grow into something far more complex in the centuries to come. As we move forward in time, we see the echoes of this association in the spirituals and folk songs of enslaved people. These haunting melodies, rich with hidden meanings and coded messages, sometimes spoke of the devil in ways that hinted at a more nuanced understanding. In one such song, the lyrics proclaim, "Me and the devil walking side by side." Was this a lament of sin, or a veiled reference to finding strength in unexpected places? The experience of Black people under slavery, Jim Crow, and systemic racism created a narrative of survival against overwhelming odds. This story of endurance in the face of unimaginable hardship resonated deeply with the biblical tale of Satan's exile. Both were outcasts, misunderstood and vilified by the powers that be. Both refused to be broken by their circumstances. In this parallel, some began to see Satan not as a tempter or tormentor, but as a kindred spirit in the struggle against oppression. As we delve deeper into this cultural reinterpretation, it's crucial to understand that this is not about embracing evil or rejecting morality. Rather, it's a complex exploration of power, identity, and the right to define one's own narrative. The Satan that emerges as a symbol of Black survival is not the Christian devil, but a reimagined figure of resistance and resilience. This brings us to a pivotal moment in the evolution of this symbol, the civil rights movement and the rise of Black power. As African Americans fought for equality and recognition, they began to question and redefine many aspects of their cultural identity. This included a revaluation of religious symbols and their meanings. The Satan who had been used to justify their oppression was now being reclaimed as a symbol of their indomitable spirit. In the fiery speeches of Malcolm X and the revolutionary writings of the Black Panthers, we see hints of this reinterpretation. While they didn't explicitly embrace satanic imagery, their willingness to challenge established power structures and reclaim vilified symbols laid the groundwork for later artistic expressions. It's important to note that this reimagining of Satan was not universal within the Black community. Many held fast to traditional Christian beliefs, seeing their faith as a source of strength and comfort in difficult times. The tension between these different perspectives would become a significant aspect of the cultural conversation surrounding this symbol. As we transition to the next part of our exploration, consider this: how does a community reclaim and redefine symbols that have been used against them. What power lies in the act of taking something meant to inspire fear and transforming it into a source of strength? These are the questions that artists, activists, and thinkers grappled with as they brought the reimagined Satan into the realm of art and culture. In the vibrant world of black art, Satan underwent a dramatic transformation. No longer the pale, horned demon of European tradition, this new Satan emerged with dark skin, crowned with natural hair, standing tall against symbols of oppression. This artistic revolution challenged not only religious iconography, but also societal norms and expectations. Picture, if you will, a mural stretching across a wall in Harlem. At its center stands a powerful figure, unmistakably satanic in form, but undeniably black in features. This Satan breaks free from chains, his eyes blazing with determination. Around him, scenes of historical injustice give way to visions of liberation. This is not a celebration of evil, but a bold statement about resilience and the power to overcome. Such artworks sparked intense debate. Critics decried them as blasphemous, a dangerous glorification of evil. But defenders saw something deeper, a reclaiming of narrative power, a way to express the complexity of the black experience in a world that often sought to simplify and demonize it. One artist, whose work gained viral attention online, explained her portrayal of Satan as a black woman rising from flames. This is not about worshiping evil. It's about recognizing the strength it takes to survive when the world sees you as the villain in their story. The controversy surrounding these visual arts soon spilled over into music and poetry. Rappers and spoken word artists began to incorporate satanic imagery into their lyrics, not as an endorsement of wickedness, but as a metaphor for the struggle against systemic oppression. Consider these lines from a popular underground track, "They called us devils, so we embraced the horns, Siv rose from the fire, reborn every morn." Satan ain't the enemy. He's the strength in me, Siv, surviving hell on earth. That's our destiny. These lyrics exemplify the complex interplay between religious symbolism, historical oppression, and contemporary identity. The Satan invoked here is not a tempter or tormentor, but a source of inner strength, a symbol of the ability to endure and overcome. Poets took this concept even further, crafting verses that explored the nuances of this cultural reinterpretation. One poem, which went viral on social media, described Satan as the patron saint of the forgotten, the ally of the oppressed. It painted a picture of a figure who stood with those who had been cast out and vilified by society, offering not temptation, but understanding and strength. This artistic movement didn't confine itself to traditional mediums. Filmmakers and playwrights began to explore these themes on screen and stage, creating works that challenged audiences to reconsider their preconceptions about good, evil, and the nature of survival. Imagine a powerful Cena, a black actor, portraying Satan, stands before a backdrop of historical atrocities. As he speaks, his words weave together threads of pain, resilience, and hope. "You called me evil," he intones, "because you feared the power of my defiance. You cast me out because I dared to question. But in your rejection, I found my strength. In your hell, I forged my heaven. Such performances were met with a mix of acclaim and outrage. Some saw them as a powerful reclaiming of narrative, a way to explore the complexities of Black identity and history. Others viewed them as a dangerous flirtation with dark forces, a misguided attempt to find empowerment in the wrong places. The controversy surrounding these artistic expressions soon spilled over into the world of fashion and street culture. Clothing lines emerged, emblazoned with reimagined satanic imagery that spoke to Black resilience. Hoodies, sneakers, and jewelry bore slogans like embracing the darkness or finding power in the flames. One particularly viral design featured a stylized image of Satan with the words "Survivor's Strength" written beneath. The creator, a young Black designer, explained, "This isn't about worshiping the devil. It's about recognizing the power we have to overcome, to thrive even when the world sees us as the villain." These fashion statements became a form of wearable art, allowing individuals to carry these complex ideas with them in their daily lives. For some, donning these garments was an act of defiance, a way to reclaim power over symbols that had once been used to oppress. For others, it was a conversation starter, an opportunity to engage in deeper discussions about identity, history, and the nature of good and evil. As we reflect on this artistic movement, it's crucial to understand that it's not about promoting evil or rejecting morality. Rather, it's a complex exploration of identity, power, and the right to define one's own narrative. The Satan that emerges in these works is not the Christian devil, but a reimagined figure of resistance and resilience. This reimagining, however, was not without its critics. Many within the Black community, particularly those with strong ties to traditional Christianity, viewed this artistic trend with alarm and dismay. They saw it as a dangerous flirtation with evil, a misguided attempt to find empowerment in the wrong places. Imagine the scene in a packed Black church, where a passionate preacher addresses his congregation. "My brothers and sisters, do not be deceived. Satan is not our ally, but our enemy. Our strength comes from God, not from the one who rebelled against him. We have survived not because of the devil, but in spite of him." This sentiment was echoed in many Black religious communities. Leaders argued that embracing satanic imagery, even as a symbol of resilience, was a step too far. They pointed to the long history of the Black church as a center of resistance and community support, questioning why there was a need to look to Satan when Christ had been a source of strength for generations. Some went further, suggesting that this artistic trend was itself a form of internalized racism, an acceptance of the racist trope that linked Blackness with evil. Why? One community leader asked, "Are we so eager to embrace the very symbol our oppressors use to demonize us?" These objections created deep divisions within some Black communities. Families found themselves at odds, with younger members drawn to the provocative power of this new symbolism, while elders held fast to traditional religious interpretations. Yet, even as many religious leaders condemned the movement, others saw an opportunity for dialogue. A few forward-thinking pastors and theologians began to engage with artists and activists, seeking to understand the pain and frustration that led to this reinterpretation of Satan. One such leader, in a controversial sermon, said, "While I cannot condone the use of satanic imagery, I understand the cry for recognition and strength that it represents. Perhaps, instead of condemnation, we need to ask ourselves why our young people feel the need to look outside our traditions for symbols of power." This more nuanced approach opened up spaces for difficult but necessary conversations about faith, identity, and the legacy of racism within religious institutions. It challenged both sides to think more deeply about the symbols they embraced and the meanings they attributed to them. As the debate raged within Black communities, it also caught the attention of the broader society. Mainstream media outlets, often with limited understanding of the complex cultural context, began to report on the phenomenon. Many of these reports sensationalized the issue, focusing on the most provocative artworks and statements without delving into the deeper meanings behind them. Conservative commentators, in particular, seized upon the trend as evidence of moral decay within the Black community. Their critiques often veered into thinly veiled racism, using the controversy as an excuse to trot out old stereotypes and prejudices. One particularly inflammatory article, which went viral on social media, declared Black America's descent into Satanism the death of Christian values. The piece ignored the nuanced artistic and cultural discussions behind the movement, instead painting a simplistic and alarmist picture. Such coverage served to deepen racial tensions, with many in the white community viewing the artistic trend with a mix of fear and disgust, further othering Black cultural expressions. It also put Black artists and thinkers in the difficult position of having to defend their explorations of identity against charges of genuine devil worship or moral corruption. The controversy soon spilled over onto social media platforms, where nuanced discussion often gave way to heated arguments and misunderstandings. Hashtags like #Asatonic Blackart and Town Not or Satan trended, with supporters and critics of the movement battling it out in 280 characters or less. TikTok became a particularly active battleground, with young Black creators using the platform to explain and defend the artistic movement. Videos exploring the historical and cultural context behind the reimagining of Satan as a symbol of Black resilience went viral, often sparking intense debates in the comments. One popular TikToker, in a video that garnered millions of views, explained, "When we talk about Satan as a symbol of survival, we're not talking about evil. We're talking about the strength to endure, to rise up against oppression, to survive a system that was built to destroy us." Such explanations were met with a mix of support and criticism. Some viewers expressed newfound understanding and appreciation for the complexity of the artistic movement. Others remained unconvinced, arguing that any use of satanic imagery was inherently wrong, regardless of the intended meaning. The online debates often reflected broader generational and ideological divides within the Black community. Younger, more progressive voices tended to be more open to the reinterpretation of religious symbols, while older and more conservative individuals often expressed strong opposition. As the controversy raged on, it became clear that this was about much more than art or religious symbolism. It was a debate about identity, about the power to define oneself and one's community, about the legacy of oppression and the search for sources of strength and resilience. The reimagining of Satan as a symbol of Black survival has had far-reaching effects on Black culture, global art, and discussions about religion and race. As we explore these impacts, we must consider how this movement has shaped and been shaped by the ongoing struggle for Black identity and empowerment. One of the most significant impacts of this artistic trend has been its role in challenging and expanding notions of Black identity. By reclaiming and reinterpreting a symbol long used to demonize them, Black artists and thinkers have opened up new spaces for exploring what it means to be Black in a world still grappling with the legacy of racism. This exploration isn't limited to visual arts or music. It has sparked deep philosophical and theological discussions within Black communities. Some scholars have begun to re-examine African spiritual traditions that were suppressed or demonized during colonialism, seeking to reclaim aspects of pre-Christian Black spirituality. One professor of African American studies explained by questioning the traditional Christian narrative around Satan. We're also questioning the religious framework imposed on us by our oppressors. It's a way of decolonizing our spirituality. This reimagining has led to workshops, symposiums, and community discussions where people gather to explore these complex ideas. At one such event in Brooklyn, titled Satan and Survival, Reclaiming Our Narrative, artists, theologians, and community members engaged in passionate debate about the role of religious symbolism in Black identity. Bereshit bara Elohim began one speaker, invoking the Hebrew words from Genesis. In the beginning, God created, but who created the narrative about us? For too long, others have defined our symbols, our spirituality, our very existence. Today, we reclaim that power. The audience, a diverse mix of ages and backgrounds, responded with a mix of applause and thoughtful silence. This was not a simple rejection of faith, but a complex renegotiation of its terms and symbols. For many young Black Americans, this movement has provided a framework for understanding their experiences in a society that often seems designed to break them. By identifying with a figure who endured exile and demonization, yet refused to be broken, they find a powerful metaphor for their own struggles and triumphs. When I see artwork depicting Satan as a Black figure breaking chains, explained one college student, I don't see evil. I see myself, my ancestors, my community, all of us fighting to survive in a world that too often treats us as less than human. The influence of this cultural phenomenon has extended far beyond American shores. Artists in Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, and beyond have begun to incorporate similar themes into their work, creating a global conversation about resistance, resilience, and the power of reclaimed symbols. In Johannesburg, a gallery exhibition titled The Devil's Advocate, Satan as Survival featured works from artists across the African diaspora. The pieces ranged from traditional paintings to digital art, installations, and performance pieces, all exploring the complex relationship between demonization and empowerment. One particularly striking installation featured a wall of mirrors surrounded by historical images of black people being portrayed as demonic or savage in colonial propaganda. As viewers approached, they saw their own reflections amid these dehumanizing portrayals, creating a powerful statement about perception and identity. The curator explained, "When you've been cast as the villain in someone else's story for centuries, there comes a point where you must decide whether to keep fighting that perception or to find power within it." This exhibition explores that choice. This global artistic movement has not gone unnoticed by the mainstream art world. Major museums and galleries have begun to feature works that explore these themes, bringing them to wider audiences and sparking broader cultural conversations. A curator at a prominent New York gallery noted, "This is one of the most fascinating developments in contemporary art. It challenges us to reconsider not just religious iconography, but the very nature of good and evil, oppression and resistance. It's provocative in the best sense of the word." But as this artistic movement gains visibility and influence, it also continues to challenge traditional religious institutions, particularly within Black communities. The Black Church, long a cornerstone of community strength and resistance, has found itself grappling with how to respond to this reinterpretation of satanic imagery. Some religious leaders have doubled down on their opposition, seeing the movement as a direct threat to the faith that has sustained Black Americans through centuries of hardship. They argue that true liberation comes through Christ, not through embracing symbols associated with evil. "Our ancestors didn't survive slavery and Jim Crow by turning to Satan," thundered one pastor in a sermon that later went viral online. "They survived through faith in God, through the strength He provided. We dishonor their memory when we look to the adversary for symbols of our resilience." But others within religious communities have taken a more nuanced approach. They recognize the pain and frustration that has led to this reinterpretation and seek to address the underlying issues, rather than simply condemning the expression. One theologian, who has written extensively on Black liberation theology, observed, "When young people turn to Satan as a symbol of resistance, they're telling us something important about how they view traditional religion. Instead of dismissing them, we need to ask why they feel that Christianity, as it has been presented to them, doesn't adequately address their experiences of oppression and survival." This has led some churches to create spaces for open dialogue about these issues, inviting artists and activists to share their perspectives and engage with traditional religious viewpoints. While these conversations are often difficult and uncomfortable, they represent an important step toward bridging the divide within communities. A pastor who organized such a dialogue reflected, "Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, came to bring abundant life. If our young people are looking elsewhere for symbols of life and strength, we need to ask ourselves what we're missing in our ministry. As we look to the future of this cultural phenomenon, several possibilities emerge. The movement could continue to grow and evolve, becoming a more established part of Black artistic expression and identity. it could spark a broader revaluation of religious symbolism and its relationship to power and oppression. Or it could face increasing opposition and eventually fade as a provocative but temporary artistic trend. What seems certain is that the conversation it has started will continue. The questions it raises about identity, resistance, and the power of symbols are too fundamental to be easily dismissed or resolved. One artist, whose controversial depictions of Satan as a black liberator have earned both praise and condemnation, reflected whether this specific imagery endures isn't really the point. What matters is that we've claimed the right to define our own symbols, to tell our own stories, to find strength wherever we can in a world that has tried to break us. That's the real legacy of this movement. As we consider this ongoing cultural evolution, we must remember that symbols are powerful precisely because they are malleable. Their meanings shift and change as communities reinterpret them to reflect their own experiences and aspirations. The reimagining of Satan as a symbol of black survival is just one example of this process, a process as old as human culture itself. What makes this particular reinterpretation so provocative is that it challenges not just religious orthodoxy, but also deeply ingrained ideas about good and evil, resistance and submission, power and oppression. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the relationship between religion and colonialism, between spiritual beliefs and social control. For those who embrace this reimagined Satan, the figure represents not evil, but the courage to stand against unjust authority, to survive despite being cast out and vilified, to find strength in adversity. It's a complex and nuanced symbol, one that resonates deeply with the experiences of many Black Americans. But what does this mean for those who hold traditional religious beliefs? Must they choose between their faith and an understanding of this cultural movement? Or is there a way to engage with these ideas while maintaining their spiritual convictions? These questions have no easy answers. They require thoughtful engagement, open dialogue, and a willingness to listen to perspectives that may initially seem challenging or even threatening. They demand that we look beyond surface-level interpretations to understand the deeper meanings and motivations behind this cultural shift. As we navigate these complex waters, we would do well to remember the words of James Baldwin, who wrote, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." The reimagining of Satan as a symbol of Black survival forces us to face uncomfortable truths about our history, our beliefs, and our society. Whether or not we agree with this particular expression, we cannot ignore the questions it raises. Now, let's delve deeper into how this cultural phenomenon manifests in specific artistic expressions and the varied responses they evoke. The visual arts have been particularly powerful in reimagining Satan as a symbol of Black resilience. Consider the work of one prominent painter whose series Fallen Angels Rising depicts Satan not as a monstrous demon, but as a beautiful black figure with wings of flame. In one striking canvas, this Satan stands amid the ruins of a plantation, one hand reaching toward the sky, while the other breaks a chain. The symbolism is unmistakable. This is not a celebration of evil. but a powerful statement about liberation from historical oppression. The artist explains, "I wanted to challenge the automatic association of darkness with evil, of blackness with sin. My Satan is beautiful, powerful, unbroken. He represents all those who have been demonized simply for existing, for daring to claim their freedom." This series, when exhibited in galleries across the country, provoked intense reactions. Some viewers were moved to tears, seeing in these images a reflection of their own struggles and triumphs. Others were deeply disturbed, viewing the work as sacrilegious and dangerous. One visitor to the exhibition wrote in the comment book, "For the first time, I saw strength in being the villain in someone else's story. These paintings gave me permission to embrace parts of myself I had been taught to fear." Another wrote simply, "May God forgive you for this abomination." Such divergent responses highlight the deeply personal nature of religious symbolism and its power to both unite and divide communities. They also underscore the complexity of this artistic movement, which cannot be reduced to simple provocation or rebellion. In the realm of music, the reimagining of Satan has taken on equally complex forms. Hip-hop artists, in particular, have incorporated these themes into their lyrics, using satanic imagery to explore experiences of marginalization and resistance. One track, which became an underground hit despite, or perhaps because of its controversial content, opens with the lines, "They called us devils from the day we arrived, and feared our power, our spirit, our will to survive. So I embrace the horns, wear them like a crown, see if I'm the devil in your heaven, I won't bow down." The artist, when questioned about these lyrics, explained, "I'm not promoting devil worship. I'm talking about how black people have been demonized throughout history. If society is going to cast us as devils anyway, why not find power in that identity rather than constantly trying to prove our humanity to people who refuse to see it?" This perspective resonates with many young listeners who have experienced racial profiling, discrimination, and the subtle and not so subtle ways in which blackness is still associated with danger or criminality in the popular imagination. One fan commented on the song's YouTube video, "This track helped me understand why I always felt like I had to prove I was one of the good ones. Now, I realize that's a game I can never win, so I might as well embrace being feared, if that's what society has decided." But others within the hip-hop community have pushed back against this trend. Some artists have released tracks explicitly criticizing the use of satanic imagery, arguing that it plays into negative stereotypes and distracts from the real work of liberation. As one rapper put it in a response track, "Don't need horns or pitchforks to prove that I'm strong and been surviving hell on earth my whole life long. My power comes from above, not below us. True liberation's a path that Satan don't know." This musical debate mirrors the larger conversation within black communities about identity, resistance, and the sources of strength in the face of oppression. It reflects the diversity of thought and experience within these communities, challenging any attempt to present a monolithic black perspective on these complex issues. The conversation extends beyond music and visual art into literature, where poets and novelists have explored similar themes. One particularly powerful poem, which went viral on social media, reads in part, "When they made me the devil then, I learned to love the heat. When they cast me into darkness, I taught my eyes to see. When they named me evilly, I redefined the word. Now their hell is my kingdom sin, and my voice will be heard." The poet explained in an interview, "Annie lo Satan, I am not Satan in the traditional sense. I'm using this figure as a metaphor for the experience of being demonized, cast out, and yet refusing to be destroyed. It's about finding power in the very labels that were meant to diminish you." This literary exploration has extended to novels as well, with several recent works featuring Black characters who reclaim and reinterpret satanic imagery as part of their journey towards self, discovery, and empowerment. One critically acclaimed novel tells the story of a young Black woman who, after experiencing a series of racist incidents, begins to have visions of Satan as a protective figure who guides her toward embracing her power rather than diminishing herself to make others comfortable. The author explained, "I wanted to explore what happens when someone stops trying to prove their goodness to a society that has already decided they're bad. There's a kind of freedom in that, a liberation from impossible standards. Satan in my story represents that freedom." These literary works have found their way into book clubs and classrooms, sparking discussions about symbolism, resistance, and the power of reclaiming narratives. They have also, predictably, faced challenges and calls for banning in some communities, particularly in more conservative regions. A high school teacher who included one such novel in her curriculum reflected, "My students, especially my Black students, connected deeply with the themes of this book. It gave them a vocabulary to discuss experiences they've had but struggled to articulate." Yes, the satanic imagery is provocative, but that's precisely why it's effective at challenging readers to think differently about good, evil, and who gets to define those terms. The debate over these artistic expressions has played out not just in galleries, concert venues, and classrooms, but also in the digital realm. Social media has amplified both the reach of this cultural movement and the intensity of the response to it. On platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, hashtags related to Satan as a symbol of Black survival regularly trend, with users sharing artwork, music, personal reflections, and heated arguments about the meaning and appropriateness of this imagery. One viral TikTok, which garnered millions of views, featured a young Black creator explaining, "When I embrace Satan as a symbol, I'm not worshiping evil. I'm recognizing that sometimes being cast as the villain is the price of refusing to submit to oppression. I'm finding strength in a figure who was punished for questioning authority, for demanding recognition of his worth." The comments section erupted with both support and condemnation. Some users shared similar experiences of being demonized for asserting their humanity, while others warned of spiritual danger and deception. This online discourse has created both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, it has allowed for the rapid spread of these ideas, connecting artists and thinkers across geographical boundaries and creating a sense of community among those who resonate with this reinterpretation of satanic imagery. On the other hand, the nature of social media often reduces complex ideas to provocative sound bites, stripping away nuance and context. This has sometimes led to misunderstandings and heightened tensions, with critics pointing to the most extreme or provocative expressions as representative of the entire movement. One artist whose work had been shared out of context online lamented, "My art is about liberation, about finding strength in adversity. But online it gets reduced to black Satan worship." People react to the shock value without engaging with the actual meaning. Despite these challenges, the digital realm has been crucial in democratizing this conversation, allowing voices that might otherwise be marginalized to participate in shaping the narrative around this cultural phenomenon. A college student who runs a popular Instagram account exploring these themes reflected, "Before social media, this conversation would have been limited to academic circles or underground art scenes. Now, anyone with a phone can engage with these ideas, share their perspective, and be part of this cultural evolution." As we look to the future of this movement, several questions emerge. How will it continue to evolve? What impact will it have on broader conversations about race, religion, and identity? And how will communities navigate the tensions it has exposed? Some cultural critics predict that the use of satanic imagery will gradually be incorporated into a broader artistic vocabulary, losing some of its shock value, but retaining its power as a symbol of resistance and resilience. Others suggest that it may give way to new symbols and metaphors as the conversation around Black identity continues to evolve. What seems certain is that the underlying issues this movement addresses, the experience of being demonized, the search for sources of strength and resilience, the right to define one's own identity, will remain relevant as long as racial inequality persists. A professor of African American Studies observed, "Whether or not Satan specifically continues as a symbol of Black survival, the impulse to reclaim and redefine symbols that have been used against us will remain a crucial aspect of resistance. It's about refusing to accept other people's definitions of who we are." This perspective highlights an important truth. The reimagining of Satan is not an isolated cultural phenomenon, but part of a long tradition of Black resistance through cultural expression. From the coded messages in spirituals to the defiant assertions of the Black Power movement, from the blues to hip hop, Black Americans have consistently used art to challenge oppression and assert their humanity. In this context, the controversial use of satanic imagery can be seen not as a rejection of this tradition, but as its continuation in a new form. It represents another chapter in the ongoing story of a people who have refused to be defined by others' perceptions, who have found ways to transform symbols of oppression into sources of strength. As one artist put it, "When you've been to hell and back, you learn not to fear the devil. You might even recognize parts of yourself in him, the parts that refuse to bow, that survived despite everything, that found beauty in the darkness." That's what this art is about, not worship, but recognition. This recognition of shared experience of resilience in the face of demonization, of the power to redefine symbols, lies at the heart of this cultural movement.